Not in a bad way, necessarily. Just different. The human exchange student sat 3 rows behind her in Xenobiology 101, his massive frame barely fitting into the standard Confederation desk designed for species averaging 1.2 meters and 45 kilograms. Kevin was easily twice that height and 4 times that mass, all packed with dense muscle that seemed excessive for any civilized species. He was always so careful, so controlled. The way he held his datapad like it might shatter in his grip. The way he moved through the corridors with deliberate slowness, as if afraid he might accidentally hurt someone. The other students gave him a wide berth, whispering about his homeworld, a Class 12 Deathworld with gravity that would crush most sentient species and an atmosphere so oxygen-rich it was practically corrosive. Jasmine, being as enterée with her natural curiosity and 4-chambered analytical brain, found him fascinating rather than frightening. She'd even smiled at him once. The look of pure relief and gratitude on his face had been almost heartbreaking. Professor Kilnax was about symbiotic relationships in low-gravity environments. When the alarm began, it wasn't the standard emergency drill tone that they'd practiced twice per semester. This was different, a deep, resonant pulse that Jasmine had never heard before. The kind of sound that bypassed rational thought and went straight to the prey instinct portion of the brain. "Attention," the station's AI announced, its usually calm voice edged with something that might have been fear if AIs could feel such things. "Unknown hostile vessels have breached Sector 7. All students and faculty are to proceed to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not." The transmission cut off with a squeal of static. For exactly 2.3 seconds, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Jasmine's classmates bolted for the exits in a panic-stricken mass. The Vrelic students, with their 6 legs, scrambled over desks. The Corthon simply teleported, disappearing in flashes of blue light. Professor Kilnax was shouting something about orderly evacuation procedures, but her voice was lost in the screaming. Jasmine stood frozen, her datapad clattering to the floor. She'd studied emergency protocols, of course, but the reality of an actual invasion was overwhelming her cognitive processes. Her people, the Zentari, were researchers and philosophers. They'd achieved spaceflight through mathematics and patience, never violence. They had no frame of reference for this. Then she heard it, a sound like tearing metal, coming from somewhere above them. The station shuddered. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in crimson. That's when Kevin moved. He didn't run for the exit like the others. Instead, he crossed the classroom, in 3 enormous strides, moving faster than Jasmine had ever seen him move, and his fist came down on her desk with devastating force. The reinforced titanium split cleanly in half. Jasmine squeaked in terror, stumbling backward, certain she was about to die. Had the stress broken the human's mind? Was this the legendary rage that made Deathworlders so feared? But Kevin wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the ceiling with eyes that had gone cold and predatory in expression. She'd never seen on his usually gentle face. He grabbed both halves of the destroyed desk and wedged them against the wall, creating a small triangular shelter. "Get in," he said. His voice was completely different now. Hard, commanding. The voice of something that had evolved fighting for survival every single day. "I don't know." Jasmine dove into the makeshift shelter just as the ceiling exploded inward, through the gap in the desk pieces. She watched in horror as things descended into the classroom. They were arthropoid, covered in chitinous plates, with multiple eyes and serrated mandibles that dripped something viscous. Kresh raiders, she recognized them from intelligence briefings. A species that had rejected the Confederation's peace, choosing instead to pillage outlying stations. Professor Kilnax didn't even have time to scream. Then, Kevin stepped between the raiders and Jasmine's hiding spot. One of the Kresh chittered something, in its harsh language, probably a demand for surrender. Kevin's response was to grab the nearest classroom chair and swing it like a club. The metal frame, designed to support perhaps 50 kilograms, struck the raider with enough force to crack its carapace. The creature flew backward, crashing into its companions. What followed was the most terrifying and awe-inspiring 30 seconds of Jasmine's life. Kevin fought like nothing she'd ever seen. There was no hesitation, no mercy, no careful control. This was what humans were when they stopped holding back Peck's predators from a world that had tried to kill them. For millions of years, he moved with brutal efficiency, using anything within reach as a weapon. Desks, chairs, his own bare hands. The Kresh were warriors, evolved for combat, but they'd evolved on a world with 0.7G. Their exoskeletons, formidable against most species, were like paper to something from a 1G Deathworld. When the station's security forces finally arrived, they found Kevin standing over 5 unconscious raiders, breathing hard, his knuckles bleeding, and his carefully maintained gentle expression completely gone. He turned to Jasmine's shelter, and she flinched, but then his expression softened, became worried, became human again. "Are you okay?" he asked, extending a hand to help her out. Jasmine stared at that hand. It was the same hand that had just torn through armored raiders like they were nothing. The same hand that always held datapads so carefully, afraid of breaking them. She took it. "You saved my life," she whispered. Kevin shrugged, suddenly looking embarrassed. The desk was in the way. Had to move it. But Jasmine saw the truth in his eyes. He'd known exactly what he was doing, had assessed the threat, created cover, and positioned himself as a barrier between danger and someone weaker. Not because it was his job or his duty, but because it was what humans did later. After the raiders had been repelled and the station secured, Jasmine found Kevin in the medical bay, getting his hands bandaged. "Why do you always act so careful?" she asked. "Move so slowly. You're clearly capable of so much more." Kevin looked at his bandaged hands for a long moment. "Because I'm always afraid," he said quietly. "Afraid I'll forget how strong I am. Forget that what's normal for me can hurt everyone else. It's easier to be slow, to be gentle, to make people comfortable." But when that alarm went off, Kevin interrupted. Being comfortable didn't matter anymore. Keeping you safe did. Jasmine's four-chambered heart did something complex. She reached out and touched his arm carefully, the way he always touched everything. "Thank you," she said, "for being willing to be what you are when it mattered." Kevin smiled. It was a sad smile, but genuine. "That's what we do," he said. "We hold back until we can't anymore. We're gentle until gentleness fails. And then," he looked at his hands again, "then we remember why Earth is a Class 12 death world and why humanity doesn't lose." Outside the medical bay window, repair crews were already working on the damaged sections of the station. Life would return to normal. Classes would resume. Kevin would go back to moving slowly and carefully through the corridors. But Jasmine would never forget what she'd learned today. That sometimes the scariest thing about Deathworlders wasn't what they were capable of, it was how much they were holding back. Every single day,